process and upset you to such a degree.
Yep.
But I think we're both in agreement that it's a good thing. People just fell down there, just fell to the floor.
They don't know what they're talking about. You know, I never liked Final Fantasy VII. I like the world.
I didn't. For the record, to be completely upfront, I think Final Fantasy VII is an overrated game.
Yeah.
That's the end of my life.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, for the record as well, I don't have a problem with people being upset about it. You're allowed to have an emotional response to this stuff. That's fine. But you know, it's still funny.
The Gaff thread is amazing, which we'll get onto in a second. But yeah, I remember a lot of people were very, very hyped about Final Fantasy VII when it came out. And there was that great CG trailer of him on the motorbike and Sephiroth coming through the flames.
Yeah.
And, you know, everyone's like, wow. And then I rented it and I just thought, I really like the world, but why am I getting George Lucas wiped into these terrible battles and that's what killed the game for me. I couldn't ever get anywhere in it.
That's the big thing, and that's where we'll start. Is that, you know, they're going off the gameplay trailer they've released. The turn-based battles are gone, and in its place, it's still an RPG. You still get numbers coming out of people's heads, but it's now real time and it's action-based and hack and slash, whatever you want to call it. And a lot of people are like, well, that's not Final Fantasy VII. To which my retort is, it's not Final Fantasy VII. I don't think in 2015, to the audience you're trying to get that game out to, because the thing is, Square Enix knows that no matter what they do, even if it was Cloud looking at the camera for 12 hours, you're going to buy that game if you're a Final Fantasy VII fan. If you're not a Final Fantasy VII fan, which is obviously people, you know, Square want to get those people as well, I don't know how you reenact those battles and get those people interested. Because turn-based battles have become so archaic to many people, especially a new generation of people finding games. That's what in my experience, I find anyway. And you could argue that maybe it's up to the game developer to try and teach those people about why turn-based battles are actually so good. But that's a lot harder than just going, well, if we just make it real-time. It's an easier sell job for us than trying to sit down and go, no, it's good because of this and that and the strategic stuff and the summons and all that kind of stuff.
I thought it was archaic back then.
Well, exactly. So how on earth are you going to try and get a whole new generation to understand it?
Yeah.
And also, the other thing is this. If you're remaking Final Fantasy VII, I think it kind of makes sense to try some new stuff. Why not take those iconic scenes and storylines and all those things that you love and build this whole new thing around it? I don't necessarily think that's a terrible idea.
No, it's a great idea, in fact. And what's happened is the kind of Star Wars problem, is that it's been so long that all of the stuff that's in Final Fantasy VII, even some of the bad stuff, has been codified into this legacy now. And I always use Final Fantasy, the remake, in comparison with the Resident Evil remake. So that came out in 2002.
Yeah.
And so there wasn't really that much time for people to go, oh man, I really loved the original Resident Evil. I mean, I did. And but at that point, you'd had Resident Evil 2, which a lot of people thought was better than the original. You'd even had the second full sequel, Resident Evil 3, by that point. And you were moving on, you'd have Code Veronica, and you were kind of moving on into a newer generation where you're thinking, right, we're going to have Resident Evil 4, and it's going to be like this and that and the other. And then Mikami's back on board directing it. And because there wasn't that long, even though it was quite a long time, 6 years between the two releases, that it wasn't just ingrained in people's heads as this was the exact way to do it. And so with Mikami on board, he just went, right, we'll take what I wanted, we'll make it look 1,000 times better. And we will build the new areas into the game, new enemies, new plot lines, new sub-bosses, new combat routines, new ways of playing a game you already love. Now, I don't think they were as fundamentally different as changing from turn-based combat to the system that they're using now. But at the same time, you have to trust that. I know trusting Square Enix is,
or any game developer.
Yeah. But at the same time, I think that if you just shot for shot remake it, then people would love that. But at the same time, you have to realise that a lot of what you remember about that game is the nostalgia.
From 1997. It's 20 years. Let's say this game does come out in it's 20 years. It probably will come out in 2017 because 20 years. And I just think you have to evolve to some degree, like you just do. And I get it, because you hear Final Fantasy VII Remake, and you think, I want exactly what I played, but I want it to look like my new games look. And also, I think if you're the gaming director on that, it's not much of a challenge. I imagine if you're given that project, a small part of you is like, well, I want to put my own stamp on it while keeping everything that was good. And I want the Final Fantasy VII fans to play it and go, it feels like a remake, because I recognise these environments and these characters. But you've also added all this new stuff, so it feels like a new game. And I think that is far more successful accomplishment than just where I took the original game and I put it in 3D or whatever and made it HD and all that kind of stuff.
The movie analog to that is the Psycho remake, Gus Van Sant's Psycho remake with Vince Vaughn in the lead, where it's just
Vince Vaughn, it's crazy, absolutely crazy.
Well, as the lead character basically is the baddie. Yeah, that was shot for shot in color.
Yeah.
And people were like, what's the fucking point? Now, it's slightly different because in video games, obviously, there's a technology issue. Yes, the original Psycho was in black and white, but it's still well shot.
Yeah.
And
The black and white adds something as well.
yeah, of course. Whereas, in color, I think if you were to really think about it and look at that Psycho remake, it's shot really nicely, but it takes something away from the kind of the harshness of the black and white original.
I totally agree.
In video games, of course, 20 years is a long time, and to see the environments looking like they should do now, like contemporary graphical quality, is fantastic. But at the same time, what you don't just want to be running around there, and this is why I love the Resident Evil remake so much, because it plays on your expectations. There's an amazing moment in that where you go to the mansion. It's exactly the same, really, but there's a little door around the back of the hall. You're like, this wasn't here before. And you go into the dining room, and you go through, and the zombie comes out, if you're playing as Jill, and all that. And then you go into where Kenneth's body is, and you're like, oh shit, there's a door here. It's like those games, Final Fantasy as well, built on exploration around the city. Resident Evil the same, and everyone loved that because you found new places to go and things to do within them. So part of the joy of the remake of Resi was, there's another door here.
Exactly.
And so it should be like that.
Because it makes you, like, you're a fan of Resident Evil, and you know what to expect, but it's almost like you're playing it again for the first time, through a brand new pair of eyes, because that's the world they've created for you. And I think that is going to be a much more satisfying experience for fans of the game, Final Fantasy VII or Resident Evil or whatever, than just taking point to point and I just think you'll get a real kick out of it, because you'll have all this nostalgia, but that will be coupled with this incredible realization that this is new at the same time. So you get to experience all these emotions that you want. I don't understand why people are getting so mad. The other thing is that it certainly seems like it's going to be episodic. Because in the press release they put out, the wording was something along the lines of in a multi-part series. Again, I don't really see it. As long as it's not like Telltale Games, where it's like, when's the next one? Not sure, but it will come from nowhere and you'll probably enjoy it. But I think it makes sense as well, because I can see them doing something like, so January 2017, Part 1, Summer, Part 2, November, Part 3. I actually think that would work quite well. It would build anticipation, we'd get people talking. I don't have a problem with that either, really. I mean, that game is, 30 hours long if you breeze through it? So I
think the gaps between them will be slightly longer, but I think between 2017 and 2020 you'll have it. And I saw on NeoGAF there's been a few comments like, it was always episodic, there were 3 discs on the PlayStation version. Like, no,
that's not episodic. That's
just
discs.
It's just you just got a gap and change the fucking disc. Like, it's like saying my dinner is episodic because I've had 3 courses. They come out one after
dinner. Love episodic dinner.
I'm not sure really that's what it means. As I said before, I've never been into Final Fantasy VII. But I'm actually more interested in playing it now. I know it doesn't have turn-based battles, because I remember playing it at the time and thinking, I really like the look of the world. The world's suffocating under all the fucking technology and poverty. And I'm like, I get it. I hated the character design. Much
got one of my notes here is Cloud still has his shit hairstyle. So I wrote that down, and looks clunky still. So they were my 2 notes.
When he's running through the corridor,
still got that weird kind of like floaty kind of
jank.
The jank, pure jank.
But I'll play it now, and I am looking forward in a way to playing it, because Final Fantasy VII, I always thought, why is it? Am I the problem? Why can't I get on with it? And the reason, mate, if it had no combat, I think I'd really like walking around. It's the bit where you had to put the little fucking mana bullshit into your sword. And I was like, you know what? Fuck all this. I really like this world. Why can't I just go and talk to people in it? Like the opposite of Doom. Why can't I just talk to them?
Exactly.
But you know what? I'll play it now.
I will. I think it's a really smart choice. I think Square Enix have sat down, weighed up the pros and the cons. I don't think it's just some, fuck it, we'll do it like this. I think they've been very intelligent with it. I understand the emotional response. I get it. But I think long term, you're going to get the game you remember with these extra sprinkles, which is going to make it feel afresh. And that is going to offer something that no game can. Because most games either play off their nostalgia or they play off their innovation.